Yo, what's going on, Serpa Squad? Tanner here. I've been down in the animal room for the past couple weeks getting a lot of work done, so I want to show you some of what I've been working on in this one, and we also got some new animals, so why don't we go ahead and I'll show you what I've got going on. As I was talking, you probably noticed that things on this wall changed a little bit. Everything to the right of the 40-gallon rack got slid over, and I inserted the new 75-gallon rack right there. You may be wondering about the 180-gallon tank and the other plywood vivariums. They're not going to stay there. They'll get moved to where the 150 cube is, and then the 150 cube will get moved to this side of the room, but that's for a different time. In the meantime, I got some work I got to do with the 75s here. I got to set them up for the frogs, and you may be wondering about how I built this rack. I did record the entire process. I'm just not sure if I want to make a video about it or not. I will briefly explain the process though. If you remember, whenever I got the 350 gallons sent to me, it was sent in crates. And there were a lot of 2x4s and various boards that I was able to salvage from it. All the 2x4s that this is constructed with under the plywood exterior were from that, so I actually didn't have to spend any money on that. And I had a lot of screws left over from other builds as well, so I didn't need any screws. And pretty much I just had to buy the hardware for this, so really it's primarily built from reclaimed materials, which I thought was pretty cool. Anyway, I built a 2x4 frame that's more than strong enough to hold both of these tanks, and I encased that in some 1/4-inch thick plywood in a way, of course, that it conceals the frames of the tanks, making it look like this is a picture frame of sorts. And after that, I added a few trim boards to make things look a little bit more finished, and then naturally I went ahead to stain everything and then put polyurethane on, and then I made the doors as well. This stand was built in the same exact way as the 40-gallon rack to its left. Although I used some different hardware, I tried to keep it a little bit more of a low profile than the other one, and I may actually go back and change the hardware on that one to match this one. I'm kind of thinking that less is more, and probably I need to remove some of that to make it match the new one. So once the stand was built, I checked the tanks to make sure they weren't tempered. We were all good, so I drilled for the bulkheads, added those and the strainers, and then I added some neoprene strips where the tanks will go to remove any inconsistencies, got the tanks in place, and the rack. Needless to say, I think it turned out pretty well, and other than differing hardware, it blends with the other stands, and I can't wait until this entire wall over here is stands that look similar to that. I'm really excited to get these set up for the frogs though. I know you guys are going to enjoy them. I'm going to like them as well, and most importantly the frogs are going to like them. But while we're over here, I'm going to come down to the Skyscraper Paludarium. Even at first glance, you probably noticed that this one looks a lot different than it did whenever you last saw it, and that's because of all the floating plants. That was something I wanted to do when I first set this up, but it just wasn't turning out right, so I scrapped it, and I tried it again the other day, and I really like how it turned out. The main issue that I was having is that the waterfall was causing all the floating plants to stir around, and they were just getting in the water column and it didn't look right. So what I did was I cut out a little airline tube, put it in the back, and then I covered the top of the water with Salvinia minima and duckweed. I also decided to add some hornwort to the back left of the setup as a little refuge for the fish. Well, you may be saying to yourself, there aren't any fish in there. That's right. Hi, Casper. Well, that's where the laundry room comes into play, and more importantly, my quarantine setup. I get a lot of questions about my quarantine bins, and this is something I've discussed in other videos, but basically all they are is a Sterilite container with a foam gasket in them and a locking lid. They're good for portable purposes, but with that, I also have the USB Nano air pumps, got a little check valve on them of course, and they go into sponge filters, so each one is filtered separately, and again they're nice because I can just hook up the USB Nano air pump to a battery pack and take them on the go with me, so if I'm ever at trade shows or anything like that, I could take these setups with me, take some bacteria, that sort of thing, and that way I always have something that I can have fish in. But that portability factor is also nice whenever I'm stocking tanks because I can just take the quarantine bin off of the shelf and then put it next to whatever tank I'm stocking it with. So I'm going to get this one off the rack and then we'll get the fish into the paludarium. To get them off, I simply unplug the air line and then I unclip the pump and clip it onto the shelf, and then I can just take my bin. I have some fish in here that I've been wanting to add to the collection now for a little while that I think are pretty cool. Not all the fish in here are for this setup, but I should be able to get the ones I need fairly easily. Or so I thought. So as I put the fish in here, I'm actually going to take them out of the net and get them in my hand. and then down through the hole here so I don't mess up the setup. I got all the fish in here and they appear to be doing well, but I want to let them acclimate for about an hour or so, and then we'll circle back and take a look at them. And before we do that, some of you may be wondering why I didn't temperature acclimate. I keep all of my tanks at the same room temperature, so just from there, this bin, and then into there, it's all the same, so there's no need to do any of that. So what I've stocked this with for now are 3 of the Blue Daisy's rice fish. Unfortunately, I was only able to get 3 at the time, so eventually I'll get some more, but for now we just have these 3. And I think they were the perfect addition to this setup. They're beautiful blue fish with red fins, which I think makes them perfect for this setup. It's dimly lit and fairly dark, and they pop against the dark background, which I think is a great combination. Aside from the contrast in colors, I also feel that this setup's ideal because of the floating plants. That definitely helps them feel secure, and the lack of flow also allows them to swim freely through the setup. Anyway, I was really excited to add these to the animal room since we already have the orange mandaka and the DIY patio pond, and I really wanted to have both of them, so I probably still like the orange mandaka better, but these are a beautiful fish nonetheless. I really enjoyed the addition of the fish, but the setup is doing quite well otherwise. We've got good growth on really all of the plants, and most notably the moss. It's really starting to crawl throughout the setup and grow in different areas of the rock, so I really can't wait until this is just a huge wall of moss. I think it's going to look awesome with little bits of rocks popping through, because right now it's mostly rocky, but long term it will be mostly mossy, so that will be pretty cool. Anyway, I really enjoy this paludarium and I can't wait to see how it progresses. We'll get animals for this one soon, and there's also this one which I just recently dismantled. This of course used to be the Nano riparium, which actually was probably one of my favorite Nano setups in the room. The only thing is, as I'm moving forward with the animal room, I really want to keep animals and livestock in mind, so as I'm doing more of these Nano setups moving forward, I really need to optimize this space and just make them the best that I possibly can for livestock, even though they are quite small. So the way that it was set up previously, it could have worked for some livestock, but it probably wouldn't have been ideal for what I want to stock it with. And I just so happened to come up with a better idea, so if I can get this to look how I have imagined, I think it's going to be one of the coolest setups in the room, and I'm most likely going to do that for next week's video, so stay tuned. And I guess I should also mention that that's going to be my scaping from scraps video, so I'm going to be using only materials I have within the room, so plants and stuff from other setups and different things like that, so it's going to be pretty cool. But moving over again, we have the aquarium rack. I've talked about the one on top a lot, but I want to talk about this one real quick. This is the Volcano rasbora islandscape from last week's video. I think it turned out really well, and I've been having a great time watching it. The reason I brought you over here though is to briefly talk about the fish. If you remember from last week's video, when I first saw these guys at my local fish store, they really caught my eye. At first glance and at the store, their colors really don't show through, but when I saw them, I knew they were something different, and I really wanted to add them to the collection, but I restrained myself. I kept going to the fish store probably over a 2 to 3 month time span, and nobody was buying them, and eventually I decided, hey, I gotta buy these guys, so I did. Had them in quarantine for a little bit, and then I put them in this setup, and I gotta say, it really was worth it. These are an awesome fish. They just have a really cool schooling pattern, and they have an awesome feeding response. Here, check this out. A vicious little feeding frenzy if you ask me. I'm really excited to have added these guys to the collection, and I think their aquarium turned out pretty good. We're gonna have to do some fine tuning over the course of time, but overall I really enjoy it, and I love how it looks with the other tank on top. I just think that it's an awesome look, and it really adds some character to the animal room. And there's one more thing I want to show you real quick. It's pretty sweet, right? I now have control of the lights of these setups on my phone because I hooked them up to a smart outlet, which I think is going to be an absolute game changer. One of the main issues I struggle with down here in the animal room while filming is reflections. That's because I got lights on all these different sides, so whenever I'm filming, I have to go around and I got to shut off all of the timers by hand, and it's really annoying. So now that I have control of my phone, it should make things way easier and allow me to make more animal focused content, more updates more of that sort of thing. So stay tuned for that. I know it wasn't the most exciting video in the world, but I'm working on a lot of very involved projects right now that are eating up a lot of my time. So I've been filming those, working on those, and I figured I would just do a quick little update, show you guys what's going on down here. So if you want to see what I do with these 75-gallon tanks here, also I need a suggestion for these two 40 gallons because the frogs are in there now. They're getting moved over here, so let me know what I should do with those 40 gallons. And stay tuned for a lot of other projects that I didn't talk about. So until next time, Serpa Squad, take care and peace.